Mike.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey, Mike. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, two mics. We got two mics. Oh, nice.
Oh, two mics. There we go. Mike
All
Hogan.
right.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Great. So for those who haven't been to one of these before, these are literally like working sessions. Like this is me and Nate like working through some stuff. But we've also had just great like input from folks who join, like great perspectives and ideas and commentary as we go. So I'm excited to have everyone here. There's Figma file. So kind of kick us off, I guess. Do you want to screen share, Nate, or you want me to screen share?
Yeah, I can walk through this and then. Oh, do we have a? Oh, great. We're probably going to make a new week here. So let me.
Oh, I just did. This is the week. This is week 3 because we started at week 0.
That's right.
Yeah, here we go.
Perfect.
So yeah, so just to kind of recap, last episode where we left off was we've done a little bit of work in between last episode and this episode, but the one on the left is what Nate built in Figma, and the one on the right is a screenshot of the actual HTML landing page, just for reference for folks to kind of see where I netted out, I think.
Yeah, I think just to kind of go through this process, it's Tom and I kind of thinking through the copy, the content, and then I've been kind of working through the visuals, and then if you haven't used Figma before, it's really easy for Tom to dig in, get the hex values, get some of the spacing, get the typography. And so for building websites, at the very least, I use it all the time, and this is kind of how we do it. So it looks great, and what you don't see here is the mobile version, at least that I saw that. Yeah, you have it here, but
I didn't put a screenshot of that in yet. I can do that right now.
And so from a aesthetic or brand standpoint, I'll just speak to this real quick. We were thinking, why not use some of the motifs, from Figma as a visual indicator in the design? So we've been kind of like designing the fields and some of the boxes and things using Figma tools, using the aesthetics of Figma. And so I'm kind of curious, if anybody has any reactions, feel free to unmute and speak up, but this is kind of what we're building so far. And yeah, if you click on that link in the chat, you can basically dive in, and I can kind of see all of you too, which is great. So Tom has been building out the live website. We've got that almost, is that live right now, or is it?
Yep. You can go to figmathinkers.com, check it out. It's actually there. It's hooked up to Button Down. I was going to use Substack, but they don't let you style the email sign-up form. And Nate was kind enough to give me a lovely styled email sign-up box. So I was like, how do I do that? So I'm going to use Button Down. Also, Button Down is like nice. It's good people. It's just this guy, Justin, who was building it. So it's nice to support him building that over there. So anyway, so that I haven't even sent an email out yet, but everything is hooked up and working, which is kind of exciting. Still some couple tweaks you can see on the mobile website, for example, a couple of layout spacing things I want to fix, but it's pretty much there. So yeah, if you guys have any reactions to any of the copy or design elements or anything there, let us know.
And you can actually comment right in the file. So if you hit the letter C on your keyboard, it'll just pop up like a little cursor. You can click anywhere on the Figma file and leave a comment if something doesn't look right, or
if you have suggestions for better copy, for sure. Yeah. And so just again, for folks who haven't been here before, part of the magic, I think, of doing the landing page first and making the landing page not just like a coming soon, but actually trying to like think through how the landing page functions is kind of a working backwards exercise of like, if you can get the language and positioning looking good on the landing page, we're going to back into then making the right course. Like if we make the course first and then try and make the landing page, sometimes I think that it doesn't quite line up. And so starting with like, how are we going to tell people about this? Does it meet people's needs? Does it use the right language? Are we positioning for the right audiences? All those questions are questions that you have to solve for on the landing page. And then once we have that, then you can work backwards and figure out what the course actually should be. And so that's what I think we should do today. Nate, I think we should dive in and actually think about like what the course looks like. We're going to try and run a beta, I think pretty soon, probably in the next few weeks, try and get some folks signed up to do a kind of live version, a kind of test version of the course, and work through our material, all that jazz. So I think we should talk today about that. And I put a screenshot over here on the right. You can follow my cursor so on the top right of Figma, where they have this little little bubbles with the letters in for the people. You can click on my face, or what might be a T. I'm not sure how it shows up for you. And then you can follow my cursor and like see where I am. But there's a great tweet here by a friend of mine, Adam, who is also building a course right now. And he has this great little framework that I thought I'd prop in here of like, creating a course is this really interesting feedback loop between principles, like these are the things that we want to teach people, things that people want to learn. That requires understanding what they currently know, their level of understanding, how complicated these things are, what dependencies there are, so which things you need to learn first. So kind of principles is kind of the kind of dry version of the curriculum, if you like. This is the kind of like, yeah, you got to checkbox to learn these things. Examples are how you make those things interesting and how you bring them to life, how you make people care about them, right? So this is like, oh, you need to learn the Bezier tool, but like, oh, here's what you can do with the Bezier tool. Here's what I did with the Bezier tool. Cool. Okay, that makes it more interesting, more tangible, more real. And then you have practice, which is none of that is going to stick unless there are actually things that you can do. So like, here's how you can use a Bezier tool. Why don't we all do something together? So I think this is just a nice little framework for thinking through kind of a course curriculum or building a course. So yeah, and we have some big decisions ahead of us, Nate. Like we haven't even figured out, like, are we going to do like 1 hour a day for 5 days? Are we going to do a 2-day workshop? Are we going to do 1 hour a week for 5 weeks? Like we have some big unanswered questions.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to ask strong thoughts.
Oh yeah, I'd actually like to ask everybody here, like what is too time consuming for you? Like I'm sure some of you have taken courses in the past, like, and some of them have been way too long. And that's kind of what I'm afraid of, is like, how do we condense this? I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
I think it's a function of how long it is. It's not just about how many hours per day, but it's a function of how many hours per unit of a day, and then how that spans, if that makes any sense. I think there's 2 variables to consider there.
Yeah, right. I totally agree with that.
So do you have a thought for one of those or the other? Because if you have a thought for, it spans 1 weekend or it spans 1 quarter, I think that would make it easier, at least for me, to respond to how many hours per week versus, I feel like if one of those gets set, I would be able to respond to the other. Hey, we want to do this in 3 days, a Friday to a Sunday. What's too much in a day? I can respond to that. Or we don't ever want to just say it's more than 2.5 hours a day. Like, how many weeks do you think that you could engage with that meaningfully?
Yeah. Well, look, before I answer that, Tom, when we're thinking about doing like a live workshop, we probably are trying to do it in the format that it might exist in the future. Because there's a balance here of like, maybe some of this is pre-recorded and we use the workshop, like the live workshop time, to kind of come together and review and talk about how to apply these things. And so there's like a couple of components where it might morph into something where we're not ready to build yet. Like we're testing the curriculum versus recording it.
Yeah, I feel like the beta, my sense of a beta is that we should go as fast as we can to actually trying to teach people stuff live. And that'll force us to do 2 things. It'll force us to articulate what we want to teach, how we want to teach it, et cetera. And it'll get us feedback on those things. So, and then from there, we can maybe run a second beta where we have some pre-recorded materials and have a mixture of like pre-recorded plus live jam sessions. And then that's closer to kind of the actual finished object that we're kind of like actually testing, getting feedback on. When I created my SEO MBA course, I did 3 betas, 3 separate live cohorts to test the material, and I was kind of refining and iterating, getting feedback each time. That was my first course, so I was also like a little bit like scared, and I think that's why I did 3, because I really wanted to make sure that it was good and that people liked it and it was the right stuff. So yeah, but you're right. Like there's a whole range of stuff, from like live cohort, pre-recorded, mixture, over 2 days, over 5 days, over 5 weeks. I don't know what the right answer is. Oh, there's also like a community aspect to go with this as well that I think is interesting. Like, part of the I think part of the magic of this course isn't actually learning Figma. It's actually getting inspired to do stuff with Figma. So like it's like learning, like if you are self-motivated, there's lots of ways to learn Figma today, right? And we're not necessarily going to be the best place for that. But like, I think the unique things that you and I bring is you're going to learn some like great design basics and principles. And I'm going to bring some like funky, weird ways of using Figma for like concept work and strategy consulting work. And like that inspiration mix is actually, I think, the real magnet for the course. That's where people are going to get really jazzed about it, because they're going to be like, oh, cool. Like, yes, I know the basics of how to use Figma, but now I have ideas for actually how to use it in my work. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would assume that everybody, you know, especially we're covering a lot of jobs and a lot of roles that people have different demands. So they might have a project in mind already coming into this. And so, you know, I'm not sure what that might be, but that probably plays a role in like how you apply it. And so, you know, making it self-paced or making some of that pre-recorded kind of allows people to sort of jump around on their own time and learn what they need to learn, and then come to a live session and actually apply it, which could be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm keen to hear from some other folks. What does everyone else think? What would be enticing to other people? Like a 2-day intensive, 1 hour a day for 5 days, 1 hour a week for 5 weeks, something else?
Yeah, Caitlin had a comment in the chat there. Kind of a blend is sort of what gets you excited. Do you have any more thoughts on that, Caitlin?
No, I just think like I think what I've kind of thought about in the past couple of years is just all the different ways that people learn and finding a good blend of it so that you're kind of appealing to everyone's best ways of learning, but certainly doing hands-on stuff, because that's what especially with Figma, what I've found over the course of the 3 years that I've been in there is a lot of times I'm like, oh, I can figure this out. And then I have a file open right now that I started yesterday. I'm going to have no clue where to start, where to go. And so like almost having, okay, like, here's what you learned. Now we're going to have you build XYZ. And then like being able to go back to the content while you're doing that and being like, oh shit, what did Nate say about this part? How do I do this? Is helpful. But then like having that hands-on, I'm actually going to play with it and see what I can do. And then that a lot of times will spur more questions for me and more of like, hey, I need more information. I need to know more about XYZ.
Yeah, Anna.
Anna, you got a hand up.
Yeah, I think for me, there's something about like intensive to like, particularly if you're freelance, like for me, it's like not quite a no-go, but it's pretty like, sorry, all my clients, I'm not going to talk to you for 2 days because I'm going to go on a course. Whereas little and often, like long-term habit building, that's kind of a thing. I mean, like Duolingo every morning are like, hey, keep the owl happy. And I'm like, I will, I love the owl. But I think Caitlin's right in terms of that, like, say there's a week of material over 4 weeks, work through it in your own pace that week. But in week 2, we're all going to get together and chat about that thing. And you can kind of do some sharing or some, so like there's an element of accountability and, but like get it all done in 4 hours if you've got a quiet afternoon, or like take 30-45 minutes each day to work through it. And I think then as well, it like you're potentially catering for different people's like lifestyles, working styles, how they prefer to learn. Is it little and often? Is it big chunks? All that kind of thing. So there's, I think, self-paced thing, but with moments to just hang out with other people who are thinking about the same stuff is probably where I would fall on it.
Yeah. I think that's a good shout. I mean, certainly like, yeah, the freelancers, even like product managers, I'm like imagining them stepping away from a project for 2 days to go learn, like, it's like, that's a big ask, I think.
Especially if Dino on their team is just like, why are you learning Figma? I can do Figma. Or like, why are you learning Figma? I can teach you that. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, there's actually a really interesting emotional idea here of like designers feeling threatened that non-designers are learning this. Like there's a I imagine there's some people here that are like going to do it covertly because they're frustrated at not being able to like do the stuff their design is doing. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this comes back to this idea that some kind of community interaction is really interesting, because if we have that idea that inspiration is useful, then seeing what everyone else is making in the cohort, I think, is really powerful, right? And especially because we're deliberately going to have a really wide range of folks, right? Like freelancers, product managers, consultants, creators, even, like all kinds of people using Figma for all kinds of different ways. And I think that's part of the magic, is like, oh, I didn't even like, that's really cool. Like, I don't even do that kind of work, but it's fun to watch it happen, and I learn something or get inspired by watching it happen. So yeah, I think there's like a strong, we talked about this before, Nate, the strong kind of like show and tell aspect to the course. There's like the fundamentals of like, you got to learn the skills, but like the best way to learn the skills is to do something, to try and do something, right? And so I think that show and tell aspect is a really, like, I almost wonder, and I'm just talking out loud, like, what if it was like every Monday there's a video chat that you can dial into, or we kind of like go through the materials, teach you a few bits, like ideas, have Q&A, and then every Friday is a show and tell. Like, everyone comes back on Friday, and it's just like you go around the room, Zoom room, and it's like, who wants to you copy and paste your thing into Figma, walk us through it. What challenges did you have trying to put it together? What didn't quite work for you? And you'd be like, I couldn't figure out how to do rounded corners, or I couldn't figure out how to do a drop shadow. And we'd be like, great, that's a learning moment. Let's just do it. Let's just fix it right now. And like, I think that could be a kind of fun format.
Yeah, I really like that. Even if Monday that was like a new lesson, whether it's live or recorded, we still come back and meet on Friday to kind of discuss. I mean, feels like the Friday show and tell could be a shorter recap of what everybody's doing than the Monday lesson. So to Brian's point early on, it's we're kind of playing with the time and the scheduling a little bit, so it's not so, I don't know, too comprehensive in a way that takes up too much time. I know it's tough for people to get away during the day, so that's always like a concern of mine.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just throwing stuff down here, Tom, in Figma. I'm not sure, pulling some of the things that you had from up top, but.
Oh, Alessandra, you got a question or a comment?
Yeah. So in the last couple of years, I've done over 20 courses at cohort-based courses. So yeah, I'm tired. I could use a nap. But what I've gotten out of that is I've done 18-week, 12-week, 5-week, 2-week. I've done 30 days every day. The most recent one that I did was simply 7 days for half an hour. So we were able to check in, put eyes on each other, because there's always a benefit in these things to the extroverted. And the introverted will hold back the question or not form the question at risk of spilling it out and being on camera when you don't want to be on camera, on mic when you don't want to be on mic. And so it seemed to make it low-hanging fruit to just, here's this frequency of half an hour a day. We were only together half an hour a day. And it was like, man, I could hide half an hour a day off the books without even breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
And 7 days, whether I like it or I don't like it, it's over. Yay! That's really mature, I know, but dopamine.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It is cool. One thing I've built is a 20-day email course for design, and I've gotten good feedback. I've gotten good feedback that like it's a daily email Monday through Friday, that it works. It kind of prompts you in the morning. The negative feedback is that it feels like it's more work than I'm actually indicating. It's a 20 minutes of watching a video, but then you could spend an hour doing the thing. But I do like the cadence, and at least with emails, it's, maybe there's an email component to this, Tom, where there's small prompts in between the sessions. Yeah, Brian.
I actually just finished today. I've been working through a mindfulness teacher training program, and there's like 3 stages to it. The first is 30 hours of mostly recorded stuff, and then it becomes increasingly like live, real time. It's kind of over 2 years. This is like the dipping your toe in the water. Something that I thought was really interesting and may have some value here is there were these maybe 30 hours of recorded stuff with prompts for journaling and writing and all of that. But along with that, I got 3 months of membership to go to twice weekly group coachings. That's something that happens throughout the year. But it's been valuable and interesting for me to have a live component where there can be questions and answers to supplement what has been modularized. It's totally like, no cost of reproduction. And just wondering, because you've talked a few times about recording modules, but also having an opportunity for either feedback, questions and answers, and with information not being the issue, like access to information. I think it was Tim Ferriss who said, if all we needed was information, we'd all have 6-pack abs and, be a millionaire or whatever. Like, it's not for lack of information. And like you said, you can learn Figma somewhere else, but that part of checking in, questions and answers, feedback, maybe some choice minimalism around curriculum. I just thought that was really interesting. I hadn't experienced that before with courses that I've done. And it seems to be pretty systematized on their end. They've created the recorded assets. And then they have these more or less two standing appointments live weekly that you can opt into if you want that.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to how I run the SEO MBA course. It's all pre-recorded, but then there's 1 hour a week of office hours, so people tune into. I think it's a pretty good model, but I think.
And that's a year long, Tom?
I do it indefinitely. Yeah. Like I kind of promise them forever right now, which at some point I'm gonna have to deal with. I think it's interesting. But the counterpoint to that, I think, is that there's something about this Figma thing that I think really benefits from the collisions between students and the kind of crossover of ideas. So whether there's a community space that goes with it, or I think it'd be good to think through that. Maybe we could just shift gears real quick. If you follow my cursor on Figma, I just created a new frame for goals and outcomes. I thought maybe everyone could just like dump in there, like brain dump in this box. What would you want to get out of this course? Jonathan, in the comments in the Zoom chat, you mentioned running workshops and things like that. Like maybe everyone just like dump in like any kind of bullet points of like goals and outcomes for what you would want to get out of a course like this. And then I think it'd be good. Then we can try and map that back to the kind of curriculum. And so if anyone doesn't know how to drop stuff in, just hit the letter T or click on the T icon in the top menu, and that'll give you the opportunity to put text in. It might be weirdly sized or whatever to begin with, and then you can select it and resize it using the panel on the right-hand side in Figma.
And I'm editing permissions as we speak. I noticed that it was view only for a lot of people. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Let's also do that.
I feel like there's a walkway that I just missed.
Would you repeat the prompt that you just laid out for us?
Just any kind of goals or outcomes that you would like to get from doing this course, like what you know about the course today, and you went through it. What would you be able to do afterwards? What's the outcome or a goal that you would be interested in? So like, not to put words in your mouth, but like, I'd love to be able to run workshops using Figma, or I would like to be able to create mockups, or just anything that comes to mind. Keep it free and loose. It'll just help us, I think, frame expectations and like I think everyone here on the Zoom call is like a great kind of cross section of the kind of people we'd want on the course. So
I'm checking out. So Alessandra, Nick's page, that just kind of like made me curious. Are you talking about he has different levels of commitment?
It's a bit like if you only have time to swing by the party and have an appetizer, then the appetizer version of this course is, and each time you swing by, you'll get this and you'll bring that. And here's your takeaway. So it's all about proportion. Like, do you want the whole enchilada, Jargonza strudel? You want the whole thing? Because sometimes we start a course. I don't know if this happened to anybody else. You start a course and something happens in life and you may have to go, oh, yeah, I can't do Jargonza strudel. I can't do the whole thing. I'm going to have to go to appetizer so that I don't miss out, but I still get to participate and learn. And if I want to come back around next time, then I'll come back around next time. But I just found the flexibility of that so realistic and not so aspirational.
Yeah, I like that. I dropped in a screenshot, Tom, of what I was looking at here, but
nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm always a fan of the multiple pricing options. Not to be too crass, guys, but gets more money out of you. Everyone in the Zoom is like, wait, what? Yeah. All right, making diagrams, frameworks, good enough to drop into a slide deck for a client. Yeah, that's great. Those like little like visual objects, I do that all the time in Figma. Figma is by far and away the fastest way to do that in my experience. That's a good golden outcome. Running workshops in Figma, Fig Jam, so I never have to use bloody Miro again. I feel you. I feel your pain. Whoever put that one in there. I hate using Miro. Yeah, that's great.
I know what
that's great.
it is, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's. When I use Miro, I feel like I'm using Figma, but like wearing boxing gloves. It's like just incredibly frustrating. It also just looks way worse. Like it's like aesthetically not interesting. What else? One step above basic. How do I help my designer rather than add more work for them? Yeah. This is a good one. Actually, I had a great little case story for you, Nate. I was working with a designer on a project yesterday, and we're on the Zoom call, and the designer's like walking me through their things, and I was like, I know a bit about Figma. I've got an idea. Instead of like telling the designer, I'm just going to go and quickly like show him what I think. And so I quickly like I duplicated his thing that he'd made, and then I went and like edited a whole bunch of it. And I was like, hey, I just want to do this, not realizing that it was a component and it was linked. So like this element that I just like fiddled with,
like 100 places,
just 100 places, I just ruined everything. And I was like, ah. I was like, I'm so sorry. But that I think is like a perfect example of the kind of like, it's very easy and simple not to do that once you know how. But it's that exact thing that like terrifies people about using Figma, is it has some of these like things going on. So anyway, so that was a funny story. Like I feel like I'm pretty good at Figma. I'm like going to run this course, and I'm still running into some of those things. So.
That's just a great example that I needed to put up here, linking and unlinking components, because you're going to run into that if you're working with designers. Totally.
What else we got? What more can Figma do besides build a white website app, email mockup? Okay, cool. Things like prototypes is one thing it can do, for example. So like you can actually make clickable things that can kind of link up and do even animations and stuff. I don't even know how to do half of that, but I know it's possible. What else we got? Taking inspiration I find elsewhere from other sites, slide decks, ads, and be able to break it down, how to use it as a template, realize it in Figma. Yeah,
I love
there's a lot. I spend a lot of my time taking stuff from the web and putting it in Figma as a starting point. So like I'm rarely kind of like starting from scratch in Figma. And there's some good kind of hacks and shortcuts and ways to do that, including the fact that it's super hard to put tall images in Figma. So anytime you screenshot a website, it's like you're already like up against it because Figma doesn't handle really tall images very well. So there's some like workarounds for that are like pretty easy to do once you know how. And so that's great. Yeah, this is great. What else we got? Reduce stage fright with my thoughts and visual motifs. When you say stage fright, is that stage fright for yourself or stage fright with others? Like what's who left that one?
Oh no, it's me. It's me. No, my own stage fright. Nick has seen it. Like I just do I'll just be thinking and thinking and thinking. I'm so happy. And then it comes to be my turn and I'm like,
I get that a lot too, Alessandra.
you do?
I do. Like it's especially when like you're presenting or you're writing something, you know, with other people around, it's like my brain sometimes stops.
Yeah. I also think that, so go ahead, Alessandra.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking our brains don't know the difference between here's this thought, this little motif. I want to tease out the connection between this idea and this idea visually, and a tiger. Like the amygdala stays stuck in everything's a tiger. And you're like, no, this is Figma, silly.
Yeah. No, I understand that fear. Yeah, again, so one of the things that I did on a project I was working on recently was even if it's a really small project, like it's kind of like I'm just like messing around, I force myself to start by screenshotting a bunch of reference examples. And just like, it could be websites, it could be logos, it could be like book covers, it could be whatever, but force myself to not just stare at a blank page. And then what's nice, like this is like the magic of Figma, I feel like in my mind, is that just looking at this stuff spread out and being able to kind of zoom in, zoom out, and like kind of get the lay of the land is the thing that generates that kind of like the sparks of ideas. Like, oh, what if it was like this, but with this? Or like, oh, that's a nice color. I like that color. I'm going to use that. Like, oh, cool. Like, and then you're off, right? Once you start going, right, then you kind of trick the brain that no, it's not tigers. I'm just going. I'm just working. You know, I'm in flow. But yeah, that creating like a little mood board or inspiration palette is yeah, I do it all the time.
Just to share, someone who's not a designer, I've been taking screenshots for a long time of email landing pages and personal portfolio sites, and I don't know what to do with it, and I don't even know, because I wrote the one about like identifying what it is I like about this. How can I then identify what that says about my own tastes and how I can translate it into what I want to design and create for myself. You know, I feel like most people, maybe like myself, might not have the design instincts, but know like, oh wow, this feels great. Or I walk into like REI or LL Bean or Muji, if you know the Japanese store. I'm like, wow, the feel here. It's like, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but this feels like something I'd want to create or imbue my other work.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, again, I will throw my hands up and say, actually, a lot of my projects start as outright copies of other projects. So like I'll find a website I like that is kind of thematically like something I think is kind of like tonally similar to what I want to do. And I'll just literally copy it. So I'll be like, I'll use their colors, their fonts, their layout, and put my own text in. But then pretty quickly I'm like, well, I don't want exactly like that. What if I move it this way? Or like this palette isn't quite working for me. So like I start to like evolve it off that. So it's like, yeah, I don't think there's any of my projects that are actual copies of other people's stuff, hopefully, fingers crossed. But like, it's a great way to start, I feel like. And by doing that, you start to get a better appreciation for like, oh, you know what, like these colors work nicely together. Or like, I'm not going to use the background color, but I like that accent color. I'm not a designer, so I don't know how to do that stuff from scratch. I'm sure Nate does. But like once I see it somewhere else and kind of can copy it, like that's like, yeah, I just feel like then it's, again, you're just like tricking yourself into kind of getting going. But yeah, there is something terrifying about doing like actual design that is hard, right? When you're like, should this be serif or not serif? How do I do spacing correctly? Like there's some of those basics are really hard. And that's partly why I think we're not really going to teach those skills deliberately in this course. But I think by watching me a little bit and Nate mostly, you're going to get inspired. Like there's this like nice inspiration aspect of like just watching a real designer do this stuff will instantly give you like tricks and ways of doing it that I think will make you better. I mean, that's kind of like your whole course, approachable design, Nate, is kind of that, right?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about, to your point, about breaking down ideas. And I'm wondering if we could find really good examples of that. So Brian's take on Muji, it's like, you know, looking at the logo, the identity, the colors that they used, and why do these things work? And maybe that's a bad example for this particular course, but we could do that with slide decks or other data analysis, you know, and say like, hey, this is like really well communicated. How did they do that? How could we recreate that in Figma? Because that's kind of how I love to teach is by remixing other content. And I think the only reason why I'm better at this than a lot of people is because I've spent many more years with many more examples like a sponge, understanding like where to pull from, right? And so it's the only like advantage I have over you is I've just spent more time doing it.
I actually think there's something really key here, which is if we can teach people how to give better visual feedback, that is a huge superpower. So like I think a lot of people, as they're developing taste, as they're developing a kind of visual eye, you look at something like, I don't like this, or I think it can be better. That is terrible feedback to give to a designer, right? Like, this sucks. Like, yeah, okay, thanks for your concern. But like, you got to give me more than that, right? Like, nobody wants to hear that feedback. So teaching people how to take a feeling that something isn't working and translate it into, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if it was better at this? What if it was better at that? I think that's a great exercise, actually. Like I would love one of the exercises in the course to be, we give you something that is kind of average and everyone has to go take it away and give feedback on it, like constructive feedback, right? So like break it down and be like, well, you don't like it, but like, what don't you like about it? Like, what would you rather, like, treat us like your designer that you're working with, and you learn how to give good visual feedback. Because I think there are like some, again, like Nate, your process there of like breaking it down, finding reference examples. There is actually a bit of a process that you can go through, I think, to do this. And I think that would be a great skill. And that really fits that idea of this course. Like, I don't know if everyone saw the copy on the landing page, but the copy on the landing page, which is Figma isn't a design tool, it's a canvas for communication. Like that's the key, is like, it's about communication, it's about better communication. And so the more that we can teach people how to give better visual feedback, like I think that's a great win. That's a great outcome.
How does that resonate with people, like in terms of like seeing really good examples in the wild and trying to understand why does that resonate with you, like in terms of how you'd like to learn something? Or do you feel like your challenges are just unique and starting from scratch is an easier way to kind of learn?
I don't know. I think it's really intriguing to me to think about like getting kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit of why we like something and why we don't. Nate, I think a little bit of your Google Docs blog or newsletter this week was kind of that same thing of like, you don't know why something is visually, like, it was really interesting for me to realize that like, oh yeah, if the background isn't white, that is a little bit softer. And so I think it would be interesting. I think it almost would be a good way to intro why this course is important, is to say like, all right, you can easily improve XYZ. Let me show you, like side by side, what looks good, blah, blah, blah. Or like even Tom, as you were kind of talking, I was thinking like, oh yeah, if you gave us something and like, one session is what, give us feedback, what you don't like about it, speak in design terms, but also like, here's something, make it better, like play with it. How would you change the fonts? How would you do this? How would you, change these things to kind of give you that like, maybe an easier entry point instead of that blank canvas.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think again, it's like giving people the confidence that you can do that. This is the magic of Figma, is you can just take something and then be like, I'm just going to fiddle with it and see if I can make it better. Like, or even if you're not making it better, you're taking something and fiddling with it to communicate an idea. So to be like, this isn't perfect. I've obviously messed up your design, but I've done it in a way that illustrates the thing I'm trying to say, which is, what if we made the headline bigger? Or what if we made the call to action on the left instead of the right, or whatever, right? Like, there's all of these things that you're not trying to do the design work for them. It's just another medium of giving feedback and communication.
I haven't watched this, but a designer friend of mine recently shared with me when I expressed an interest in learning design or being more conversant in it. I can find the name of the channel. It's 3 letters, like not MDN, but something like that. And I
MDS.
think he did MDS. And I thought it was interesting. I look forward to watching it. I think he goes to a site, I don't know if it's a live site or some student of his, and he improves it, but he talks about why he's making the changes that he does, and to see the side by side of this is how it started, this is how it ended, and the thinking about the header being larger and heavier weight so that it has more contrast or whatever the things are.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it was enough to catch my attention to want to watch that video, and I could see it being a useful exercise or tool to help illustrate the other points you're talking about here.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder if for each week there's like a breakdown of some example that's maybe part of the curriculum, maybe not like the actual work that you have to do, but maybe it's kind of like some reference material. And we have 1 or 2 examples for each kind of like thing that we're discussing. Because those are really, and I love doing those too. And MDS is really great at those. Just taking something that exists, like a Stripe website, you know, and talking through like what makes it work. What are some of the things you could improve?
One last thought on this, as someone who's still learning the vocabulary around all this. I think it could help me increase my sensitivity to these things that I don't notice off the bat. I might feel, but I can't put my finger on, is to see 2 examples of different sites saying, you know, when you pick the point in the lesson in the curriculum, say, hey, we're talking about font weights here, or we're talking about page flow or whatever. And to be able to see, hey, here's a site that does that well. Here's an example or wireframe that we created that does it well. Here's one that is lacking. Because I think, and I'm starting to write on this for something else, that I think a lot of ability boils down to how sensitive we are to like the little things. And for someone who doesn't have that sensitivity, like you've described developing over time, just from having spent so much time around this, you know, how does that sensitivity get developed so that you can identify or see, oh, this is about placement, or this is about proportion given the viewport of the device, or this is about font weight, or this is about color contrast. And to be able to say, hey, we're focusing on this one thing, this lesson or module or whatever. And then in the wild, in our own designs for a presentation or a slide deck or whatever, maybe people would be better able to identify for themselves, oh, this is where this is weak, because I spent time thinking about font weight. I spent time thinking about color contrast. I spent time thinking about, you know, whatever.
Right. Alessandra, you got your hand up.
I just wanted to continue with what Brian was saying, that what I anticipate may happen on this course is that we will be able to verify and reflect back to each of us, like, oh my God, like Brian, you already have the sensitivity to this, this, and this. Give yourself credit for that and move on. You're already good at. Sometimes we'll stay stuck in that because it could be better. Well, yeah, but who cares? Like, give yourself credit for the things that you already get, and then have fun playing with your friends in the unknown and in the making the mess and pulling out all the toys. I think there's something that we're so, 2-0 and go, get the boxes checked. Let's get the stuff done so that we can relax, that we don't give ourselves credit for what we're doing well, or that we're doing good enough.
Yeah, it's really important. That's
I think that's right.
Right on. Hey, I'm just gonna pick on a couple of people because I know you're probably listening, but Chris, I'd love, if you're around, you don't have to, but if you're around, I'd love to hear from you and how you use Figma and what are your challenges.
Sure. Well, so I don't have a design background at all. And it's kind of like if I'm working on a project and it's something like, oh, I have a wall of text and I just need like a logo or something, and then I rush the Figma and it takes me like an hour to do like a square. That's kind of like where I am. Like 2 days ago, I made something and then it took me a while just to figure out how to export it. So I probably like most people are beyond that, but just little things like that.
So helpful.
Yeah, there's a whole bundle of things around exporting that I'm still getting my head around, but yeah, that's great. We have a few more minutes. I know Nate has to drop a few minutes early. We've kind of driven the discussion a little bit here. Anything that we haven't talked about, like any feedback from other folks on anything else, like any other reactions? What are we not thinking about that we should be?
I like this as templating down here. I think that that's really important, so that we're not redoing our work each time. I think part of what
I don't know how to do templates.
Yeah. Well, like components, right? Like the thing that you kind of messed up yesterday.
I mean, I think I'm going to be a great foil, Nate, because as much as I pretend to, I actually don't know that much about how to use Figma. So yeah. I'm going to be the best example of like I'm a student here too.
Teaching the course gets you free access into it, so that's
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the only reason I'm here, guys. It's true. As we found out.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really, I think, one of the biggest reasons why I use Figma is because of that. Like, try not to start from a blank canvas every single time and reusing the things that you've already created. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking through some of these other examples. Slide decks for sure. It's kind of a strange one to me because I always use them for slide decks, but I know that people don't tend to think about Figma as a slide deck, so that's kind of close to my heart. Designing personal website, yeah, that's great.
Yep, that in Figma. Let's shift gears real quick. Anyone got any creative ways to launch this? How do we make this big? How do we get thousands of people involved? I have my own ideas. Anyone else got any creative? Like who else is like interested in this space that we should be talking to or referencing or reaching out to?
And I'll just add to that, or places you think where people like us hang, that might be good to kind of like introduce ourselves to. Design jam sessions, yeah. What, Christian, where are those people who'd be interested in watching those videos? Where do you think they hang out?
So there is a new YouTube channel called Relume, where they've basically brought on a bunch of top designers, and then they'll collaborate trying to build a project or website. Within an hour, they'll have all the assets sort of like ready and available on the project file. But if you guys had something maybe somewhat similar, I think people would watch it. It seems to be a very entertaining format just because there's a lot of creativity involved.
Yeah. What was that? Relume? Oh, also, hey, Christian.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, I'll share it in the chat.
Okay, great.
Try to find it.
Even just as you're talking, Nate, I think our biggest, most gutsy move is to basically be like, if you use Notion, you should use Figma.
Yeah.
Like everyone who is like comfortable using new tools, interested in like ways of working, collaborating on creative projects, like basically everyone who uses Notion, you should have this string in your bow. You should at least have like basic competence in Figma too.
Yep.
I feel like that's our kind of aggressive stance. Like, and then we have lots of people to reach out to, right? Tons of people that I feel like that opens up for us.
I even think,
etc.
I think even people using Miro could much easier make that transition to Figma too. Not that it replaces everything that Miro does, but just taking your ideas and whiteboards and and visualizing them is what would be really great. Any Miro users here? Yeah, I saw you smiling, Chris. Did that hurt when I said that, or was that like a positive thing?
I actually had the exact opposite reaction that Tom said he had. Like when I use Figma, I feel like I'm wearing gloves.
Interesting.
Chris, I had the same thought. I was thinking that maybe like that gave me some optimism because I find Miro so challenging that maybe Figma would then be easier for me to learn. Because yeah, I've used Miro and it's like I
think Figma is more powerful than Miro, but I personally feel like it is actually also more intuitive. I find Miro is less intuitive. It has more guardrails, but that actually kind of slows me down sometimes, so it makes it more clunky to kind of do what you want. I may be wrong about that. But.
It feels to me like the difference between writing in Notion and writing in like IA Writer or something, or Rome or Obsidian or something like that. Like Miro feels a kind of slow.
Yeah.
Figma feels like, oh, okay, I'm dragging something and it's real time. It's moving with me.
100%.
Like I don't feel the lag.
Yeah, that does my head in with Notion.
Yeah. A thing I was wondering about in terms of positioning or making it big, like other than channels, it's like obviously everyone's chat GPTing their way through life at the moment. And I wonder if there's like some kind of angle on like leveling up your thinking a little bit. Like your brain is not yet replicable in a model. Show your thinking in ways that ChatGPT might not be able to recreate, like using Figma to create new connections or like those new frameworks or diagrams or whatever. Like it's a value add that a human can do versus like say a product manager could probably type into ChatGPT, can you write me the backlog for this new feature? And it would spit you out a whole load of user stories. Like, cool, well, your product managers just become obsolete unless they've had some new thoughts and some interesting ways of framing them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're providing income security to everyone here when everyone else is going to lose their jobs to robots. This is great. I really appreciate everyone chiming in here. This is like super useful. I feel like this is a super useful set of prompts and ideas that it's really going to help us shape the curriculum. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I have to drop a little bit early. Tom, I don't know if we should just end it or.
I think we should just wrap. I think it's good. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to share the landing page. It's going to go up right after the call. It's like pretty much done now. I'm going to tweak it, and then we can start sharing it and getting email signups and all that jazz. So I'm excited. We've got momentum. We're going.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.